Yeah, hello everybody. We are covering the developments happening between uh, Israel and Hamas, the Palestinian government in effectively the Palestinian government in Gaza. Wait, what happened? Essentially, Hamas launched a military campaign against Israel on a scale that hasn't really been seen before. And over the course of the morning, over 5,000 rockets were fired at various Israeli cities, causing quite a bit of damage and killing a lot of people. On top of that, the attack included air, land, and sea methods of attack. And dozens, perhaps hundreds of Hamas fighters managed to infiltrate Israeli towns and cities, and quite a few civilians have been killed. Many have been captured, and there's a lot of pretty terrible video currently circulating on social media, so please be careful if you go and look this up, because I can confirm there are videos of women who've been raped and bodies being desecrated, and it is quite bad. There's really no way to sugarcoat the situation or make it more palatable or digestible. It is just incredibly bad. It's horrible. Yeah. And of course, talking about Israel and Palestine is going to be a tricky situation to navigate, but just to make my positions clear up front before we get into a lot of this, is Palestine should be free. Israel has them currently under an apartheid regime. Palestinians do not have autonomy. The only way forward is through, a lifting of the apartheid, the end of the occupation, and I'm sorry. I've looked at a lot of the different hot takes that are going around about this. And no matter how people cut it, committing war crimes is not going to free Palestine. And it is... I think that we need to make an important distinction before we go into this, that understanding the circumstances and situation that lead to what is an inevitable attack by Hamas. Understanding those things does not mean justifying war crimes. And I've seen some pretty horrible behavior on social media from people who are cheering on the attack of Hamas on Israel and Israeli civilians as a revolution and much success to it. And frankly, most of the targets being hit by Hamas are civilian. From most of the reporting I've gone over. So this is trying to claim that this is something that is going to help or free Palestine is, I would argue, naive at best and disingenuous at worst. And I want to make clear up front that I am in favor of Palestine being free, but the stated goal of Hamas is to unite international support behind its freedom, and that is explicitly the stated goal of this operation. That's not going to happen unless the long-term goal is to try and unite the world against Israel by basically provoking Israel into taking actions that are far more explicitly genocidal than they have up to this point. This is not a tactic that is going to unite the international community to put pressure on Israel to end this unjust occupation. So this is obviously going to be a difficult subject. People are going to have a lot of strong feelings about this, but I wanted to make my positions up front very clear. I don't think that you can applaud war crimes and call yourself like I don't know, like some kind of principled leftist, frankly. I think war crimes are bad when Ukraine does them. I think war crimes are bad when Russia does them. I think war crimes are bad when the United States does them, of course. And we've talked extensively on this channel about the war crimes Israel has done. We've gone over the B'Tselem reports about the apartheid regime that is being imposed, the ever-encroaching threat of settler violence. We've talked about the genocidal rhetoric that has come out of Israeli officials. I mean, just a few months ago, you had an Israeli minister calling for the complete annihilation of a Palestinian town, Hawara. And all of these things need to be condemned. But just because one side of this conflict is objectively oppressed and the underdog does not mean supporting indiscriminate violence against civilians. This is not going to help anybody. And if anything, the most horrifying part of this attack, and there are many horrifying parts, is that this attack is going to empower the far right in Israel that is objectively already like contemplating the annihilation of Palestinians. They are by every metric pursuing the annihilation of Palestinians, which understandably leads to violent outbreaks like this. But this violent outbreak is going to be used to annihilate Palestinians. And it's a terrible situation. There's no winning here. And my heart breaks for the people of Palestine, because already we're seeing the results of this attack. So genocide. I mean, Sweet Myth's Music, you already had elected officials prior to this calling for the genocide of Palestinian communities. And the people in power, the main party in charge of Israel, is fascist. And they will use this as justification to achieve their ends, which is the complete and utter domination of current Palestinian lands and the removal and destruction of the people on those lands. So I am very concerned about where this could go and how this will be used to harm Palestinians. I feel like there's a lot of soft pressure on Israel that was squandered by Hamas. This is insanity. Yeah. There is nothing good that is going to happen here. Already, Israel has pledged to retaliate on a scale never before seen, which is saying quite something, considering Israel frequently kills like 40 times more people than Hamas does. And so far, we've seen a few of these retaliatory attacks including one against a well office building. Hundreds of Palestinians are dead. Over 100 Israelis are dead, with many missing, presumed captured. And yes, this is not great. So we're gonna go over here the kind of the order of operations. So Hamas launched this operation earlier today, and it has since fired over 5,000 rockets at various targets within Israel. Again, these rockets are unguided, so again, whatever targets they're fired at are very unlikely to be hit, and many civilians have, the Iron Dome, while effective, does not prevent all rockets from getting through. It's not a 100% foolproof system. And on top of this, Israel, the Hamas operation is called Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. A lot of this can be traced back to Israeli meddling with the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the worshippers there. In part, this can be seen as retaliation for that. And yeah, so far, more rockets have been fired in this conflict that has lasted less than a day than in the entirety of the 2014 Hamas-Israeli war. And in response, the Israeli army has launched Operation Iron Swords against Hamas. And this is all further complicated by the fact that Hamas launched this attack on Simchat Torah, which is a Jewish holiday. And again, these attacks are quite far-ranging. Some rockets were able to hit in the Tel Aviv area. And yeah, additionally, fighter jets have been scrambled by Israel to conduct bombing attacks on Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. But as we all know, when Israel bombs Palestinian cities and targets, they are often also killing women, children, and the elderly, and that is still the case in these retaliatory strikes. It seems very few military targets on either side have actually been hit. Most of the casualties are civilian. There are gun battles being currently engaged in several different cities and towns within Israel and also within Palestine. Yeah, it's really bad. So far, some preliminary estimates right now estimate that around 160 Palestinians have been killed, with over 1,000 wounded. Again, most of them civilians. Israeli officials are claiming over 100 Israeli deaths, with possibly over 1,000 wounded as well. Yeah. The spokesperson for Hamas, named Khalid Kadomi, went on social media and said, "We want the international community to stop atrocities in Gaza against Palestinian people, our holy sites like Al-Aqsa. All these things are the reason behind starting this battle." And the leader of Hamas's military wing put out a statement saying, "This is the day of the greatest battle to end the last occupation on Earth. Everyone who has a gun should take it out. The time has come." And Hamas is calling on resistance fighters in the West Bank to join the battle, along with Arab and Islamic nations. Again, this is very unlikely to actually happen, at least as far as other Islamic nations are concerned, because again, Israel has nuclear weapons, which proved to be a pretty powerful deterrent, as well as um, a very advanced and large military. So this is really bad. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, has basically sworn vengeance and saying that this is a war it will win. The Israeli defense minister, Yoav Gallant, echoed that statement and added that Hamas has committed a grave mistake this morning and launched a war against the state of Israel. There are currently estimated to be about 21 active battles ongoing in southern Israel. And many of the prisoners that have been taken or kidnapped from Israeli towns are being held as hostages, presumably for some kind of negotiating purposes. Yeah, in one case, Israeli forces have been able to surround a house in the Ofakim settlement, and Palestinian fighters inside are trying to negotiate their freedom in exchange for hostages. Yeah, it's really bad. And if their goal was international pressure on Israel to end the apartheid, again, this was not successful, at least not in the short term. The Czechoslovakian government has, condemned Hamas. The European Union has, expressed stronger ties with Israel. France has basically expressed full solidarity with Israel. Same with the UK. Egypt is warning of grave consequences for escalating on the part of Israel. It called for exercising maximum restraint and avoiding exposing civilians to further danger. And the Hezbollah, another group in the region, is saying that it's monitoring the situation in Gaza and has direct contact with the leadership of the Palestinian resistance. So there is a chance. I saw someone in chat mention that this could be some sort of coalition attack, and that is entirely possible given what we know. So, yeah, a lot of this is very, very bad. There's no way to sugarcoat that. And we have a bunch of statements from various people talking about this. Yanis Varoufakis, the path to ending the tragic loss of innocent lives, both Palestinian and Israeli, begins with a crucial first step, the end of the Israeli occupation and apartheid. And I think that this is a good point, and it is correct, like objectively correct. The issue with it is that despite it being objectively correct, the fascist forces within Israel find this to be incredibly useful for furthering their own power, which is very likely to be one of the reasons why the apartheid continues in Israel. It is politically useful to the ruling party to have them as opposition. And it allows them to expand the police state. It allows them to expand the military. It allows them to expand their own power at the expense of civil freedoms, and ultimately is barreling ever closer to genocide. There's just no way around this, you know? Now we have journalists from Israel who have been covering the Israel-Palestinian situation for over a decade. Here's Hagai Matar saying, "This is a terrible day. After waking up from air sirens to a barrage of hundreds of rockets fired on Israeli cities, we have been learning about the massive, unprecedented invasion from Gaza into Israeli towns and cities and getting reports of many civilians killed and kidnapped. The absolute dread of people who are seeing militants in their streets and homes is unimaginable. Attacks on civilians are war crimes, and my heart goes out to the victims and their families and to all those living in the western Negev. As I sit at home in Tel Aviv, fearing for my family and friends, I know that this has also been a reality for Palestinians, especially in Gaza, for decades. One of fear and being defenseless, and a brutal enemy who's no problem killing civilians. Entire families, even." Israeli social media is now seeing calls for actual, literal genocide. Netanyahu has promised an attack on Gaza in a scale our enemies have never seen before. We should expect so much more bloodshed in the days and weeks to come. There's no military solution for Gaza or the occupation generally. There never was. The only solution has to be an end of apartheid and promoting a future based on justice and equality for all of us, Palestinian and Israeli. Not in spite of the horror, but exactly because of it. Again, this is not me pulling out like, or being hyperbolic. There is a very real threat that this will be used to justify, wrongly, by the way. Not it is absolutely unconscionable, but it will be used as a pretext to begin genocidal operations, far more explicit within the Gaza Strip. There's no way around that, given the political realities of the Israeli government. And I don't know what the path forward is. I don't have like a good analysis. I don't have the ability to fix these relations. All I know is that these war crimes are going to bring untold suffering on many, many people. And overwhelmingly, that suffering and death is going to be inflicted upon Palestinians. There's a great book on Israel's army called An Army Like No Other, How the Israeli Defense Forces Made a Nation by Chaim Bereshith Zabner. I'll see if I can check that out. Remember, not all Palestinians are Muslim. Many are Christian or even Jewish. So people claiming this is just a religious conflict are heavily oversimplifying the situation. Yeah, no. Like, the religious fundamentalism within Palestine is something that is bred by the economic and the economic and military threat they are constantly under. Again, as we've gone over in the past, there is not freedom of movement within Palestinian territory. You have different rights depending on which city you live in. There is no reliable health care within Palestinian territory. There's no real way to try and make a living that is stable because settler violence can take it away from you any day. Or Israeli army violence. There is complete and utter desperation. And in that desperation, people turn to fundamentalist religion and they turn to violence because they have no other recourse. And this is all understandable. It still does not justify atrocities and war crimes. It doesn't. I'm sorry. There's no argument someone can make to me where they can argue that actually it's good. It's good for Hamas fighters to rape Israeli women. That's not. There's no argument you can make to me for that. There's similarly no argument that you can make that justifies Israeli army soldiers violating Palestinian women. There's no argument there. And yet I see it happening on social media today. It is deeply frustrating. and anger-inducing, as many aspects of this conflict are. Yeah, and again, like, here's just one example. Trigger warning. The bodies have been blurred, but just to be aware of what's happening right now. Here are here's the aftermath of the Hamas attack. You know, like, just bodies in the street. And these people aren't soldiers. They're just people. This is not a military target. And I cannot in war, military targets are fair game, you know? But most of the people being hit by this, on both by Hamas and by Israel, are not military targets. They're people just trying to live. And I do not understand this idea that we cannot walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. That we cannot both condemn Hamas for war crimes and atrocities while also condemning the apartheid and oppression of the Israeli government. And yet a lot of people act like these two things are mutually exclusive. Like, you cannot do, you can only do one. It's an either or. It is not. Here's Terrell Jermaine Starr, host of Black Diplomats, with his take. We can condemn the actions of Hamas and condemn the racist apartheid government of Israel. No normal human being would celebrate what Hamas is doing, but what's unfortunate is the world almost never condemns the state of Israel for doing the exact same thing to Palestinians, which is absolutely true. This is absolutely true. If this tweet offends you, you can simply unfollow. I refuse to be morally inconsistent in my politics and calls for liberation. Israel bears ultimate responsibility for what Hamas is doing. This is what happens when you run an apartheid state and the world's most powerful governments do nothing to stop it. The EU and the US are condemning Hamas, but say and do nothing about the racist and violent actions Israel conducts against Palestinians. And this is true as well. Ultimately, the responsibility of this entire situation is on the occupying force, the militarily stronger force that is enforcing its will upon an occupied people. That's where the ultimate responsibility is. But there is also the distinction between understanding that and then going the extra step and justifying atrocities. Additionally, like, I gotta throw this out there. a lot of the content that you're going to see on social media is going to look really bad, like optically. Again, if the goal of this attack was to unite the international community against Israel and put pressure on them to end the apartheid regime, it is not going to be very effective when there are videos like this coming out. And this is returning Hamas fighters allegedly with captured Israelis. Like, again, the video like this is going to be played across Israel for months. And it is going to be used as a pretext to kill these people. And I just, ultimately, like, there's no solution without international pressure on Israel. And there's no solution without U.S. pressure on Israel in particular. This is something that can only be really fixed. And this, by the way, is why I tend to talk most about domestic politics in the United States. It is honestly, guys, at the end of the day, winning domestic victories and primarying Democrats who take AIPAC money, the lobbying organization of the Israeli state government, it's one of the only ways we could maybe possibly bring a peaceful resolution to this conflict. One of the long shots, but it is one of the only shots to a peaceful resolution here. And this is why, again, a lot of what I talk about and do is focused on domestic organizing and getting involved, because what happens in the United States and who is in power here has such long knock-on effects. It is imperative that we are able to elect ever more progressive and left-leaning people, because we saw what happened when Donald Trump was in office. He empowered the fascist government of Israel by moving the diplomatic embassy to Jerusalem. He had settler communities named after him that were seized from Palestinians. We need to be able to put the international pressure that is necessary to end this conflict on the state of Israel. And the only thing that fascists will respond to is a larger power essentially forcing them to end the apartheid. So what I'm saying is, if you care and you are in the United States, we need to get more involved in a capacity that can affect more than just local and state races. death is treated like a poster for some reason. How do kids grow up to be different? Well, again, the average age of a Palestinian is 16 years old. So when you grow up and people you know and love are just being killed indiscriminately while under occupation, the message that you will live forever as a hailed hero for sacrificing your life in the name of a greater struggle, that becomes a lot more appealing. You know? It is not strange that Palestinians are of that mindset. Oh, sorry. The average age of a Palestinian has gone up. It's no longer 16. It's 19.6 years. The average Palestinian isn't even 20 years old. It's yeah. It's still insane. Yeah. Bernie Sanders took to Twitter today. I absolutely condemn the horrifying attack on Israel by Hamas and Islamic Jihad. There's no justification for this violence, and innocent people on both sides will suffer hugely because of it. It must end now. And I have to say, this is 100% accurate. I have to be honest with you guys. As a leftist, again, there's a difference between understanding why Hamas is in power in Gaza and saying it's actually good that Hamas is in power in Gaza. Yeah, there's a wide difference between these two things. And Hamas is a bad organization. It is the equivalent of a gang that is frankly just so large that it is able to function as a government. And as a leftist, you should also be able to say an ideology predicated on holy war is bad. Like that shouldn't be hard. And Bernie Sanders is 100% correct when he says that innocent people on both sides will suffer hugely because of it. And overwhelmingly, those innocent people are going to be Palestinian. And I saw this, and it irritated me quite a bit. Here's Brianna Joy Gray saying, "This is a choice. You could have easily made a statement more like this one." And quote tweets Jeremy Corbyn, who says, "The unfolding events in Israel and Palestine are deeply alarming. We need an immediate ceasefire and urgent de-escalation. We need to a route out of this tragic cycle of violence. Ending the occupation is the only means of achieving a just and lasting peace," which I don't disagree with. But what I do disagree with is Brianna Joy Gray framing it as if Bernie Sanders is not in favor of de-escalation and Bernie Sanders is not in favor of like ending apartheid. Like, again, this is very disingenuous and, dare I say, bad faith. But of course, there are many people being very like I guys, the framing of this as like some sort of liberatory moment, it's not. Like, to the extent that this is Palestinians breaking their chains, that's going to be followed up with bombs that they can't defend from. It's going to be followed up with the deaths of children and elderly. And on the one hand, you could say that that's a form of bravery, but it's not just risking like individual fighters' lives, it's risking everybody's lives in the Gaza Strip. Because currently the Israeli government is willing and able, and after today, far more willing to completely eradicate the people of Palestine. And I've seen people bring this up, and the response, like some of the responses that I've seen have been like, oh, well, what's the worst that they could do? They've already done their worst for decades. The thing is, they haven't. The thing is, they are now willing and able to carry out a genocide, and I have a very deep and cold feeling in my heart that that is exactly what is going to happen in the months ahead. Yeah, they've been slowly pursuing an agenda of ethnic cleansing for decades. But I think that that ethnic cleansing is going to take a very different direction following this. And again, just to reiterate, prior to this, you already had calls to wipe out Palestinian towns. Like so severe that even the US State Department was like, "Whoa, buddy, you shouldn't be saying that." Here's again, this guy is a minister within Israel saying on camera, because I think the village of Hawara needs to be wiped out, I think the state of Israel should do it. And knowing that this rhetoric is flourishing right now, in particular, I just it's going to be bad.
אדוני השר, למה עשית לייק לציוץ של פעיל ימין, דוידי בן ציון, שכתב בטוויטר אחרי הפיגוע הרצחני, את הכפר חווארה צריך למחוק היום? כי אני חושב שאת הכפר חווארה צריך למחוק. אני חושב
What he's saying here is, I liked a tweet that called for the deletion of the village of Hawara, because I think that the village of Hawara should be deleted. It is the state that should erase it. I mean, you already have people like conservative commentators in America arguing for essentially like, oh, well, if there are kids in a school and Hamas is behind them, well, you got to bomb the school. That was Dave Rubin's famous split from TYT. Is he argued that it was completely justifiable for Israel to bomb schools filled with children just because Hamas was in there. You have people like Ben Shapiro arguing that Arabs just like to live in sewage anyway. This rhetoric is on the rise. Additionally, some government targets have been hit by Hamas fighters, specifically the mayor of Israel's Sha'ar HaNegev region has reportedly been killed by Hamas. The attacks here are absolutely chilling. And I do want to say, by the way, and we can take a look here at B'Tselem's website, right? Because they cover a lot of settler violence. They cover a lot of Israeli state violence, and they've been doing a really, really wonderful job covering the pogroms being pursued by the Israeli government. Again, these attacks by Hamas, they don't come out of nowhere. They don't just materialize. You know, when Martin Luther King Jr. said that a riot is the language of the unheard, well, in an apartheid state, you know, you get organized violence as part of the language of the unheard. And ultimately, this is where that leads. Yeah, B'Tselem is one of the best resources for figuring out what's going on in Israel regarding settler violence.
For covering this very important issue, Jack.
You're welcome, Kyrou. Yeah, they cover a lot of the violence that's been slowly encroaching on Palestinian lands for decades upon decades now. And I mean, like, here's a story. Israeli forces killed 2 Palestinians, 24 and 16, in separate incidents that began with protests against land grab in the village of Safa. So again, part of what makes this so difficult here is that peaceful protests, or protests where people are justifiably angry because their homes have been bulldozed to make way for, you know, middle-class Israeli settlers who are just stealing the land. And by the way, the UN recognizes this as stealing Palestinian land. And that is why the state of Israel is one of the most condemned nations by the UN in history. And Erica posted a quote from Moshe Dayan, former Israeli defense minister, saying, "You Palestinians as a nation don't want us today, but we'll change your attitude by forcing our presence on you. You will live like dogs, and whoever will leave, whilst we take what we want, land, water. The U.S. pays for it and protects us." Yeah. This is nothing new for Israel, but I do think that it will get exponentially worse. You know, this is, up till now, we've had settler colonialism and the horrors of that, backed by state power. From here on out, I think we're going to see something very different. This is going to, I believe, and I have no, you know, foreknowledge of any of this, but I believe that we're going to see even more explicitly genocidal rhetoric. And again, a lot of the violence that we're seeing has been inflicted upon Palestinians for decades with little to no attention being paid to it. You know, here's another story from B'Tselem, just from September, from last month. Soldiers enter homes of extended Ajluni family with dogs, separate children from their parents, and steal items. Female soldiers strip search the women. you know, like this is this is the everyday violence Palestinians are subjected to under apartheid in Israel. This is where the violence we're seeing now comes from. It is inflicted by the occupiers. And then the occupied struggle violently for freedom. And then the occupiers clamp down even harder. And there's not a whole lot of wiggle room left to clamp down. So yeah. Now, we'll take a look at some of the live updates from Al Jazeera here. Gaza hospital, this is as of 9 minutes ago. Gaza hospital reeling from Israeli power halt. Mohammed Abu Silmiya, director of the Al-Shifa hospital, has said that Israel cutting off power to the Gaza Strip leaves hospitals and medical facilities in a tight spot as they struggle to treat the flow of casualties from Israel's ongoing air assault. Because, you know, when I mentioned that earlier, that hasn't stopped. It's currently happening. The Al-Shifa hospital is the largest in the besieged enclave and is receiving the highest number of casualties. Yeah, the Gaza Strip is relatively small, chat, and they only have one major hospital. They have other medical facilities, but the Al-Shifa hospital is the biggest. Quote, "We're doing what we can with whatever we have, but we are facing a real threat, especially that power has been cut and generators here consume 48,000 liters of fuel per day. We cannot afford to continue operating this way." He said that 200 Palestinians have been killed and more than 1,600 injured, the majority of whom are in critical condition and require ICU treatment, and others who need surgery. The Strip has been under tight siege for 17 years. The medical sector has been paying the heaviest price to that siege. We have shortages of medical supplies and equipment, namely those badly needed in the emergency rooms and intensive care units. And again, by the way, this is another way in which Israel is occupying Palestine. I know that there are some Israelis who will claim that the occupation, there is no occupation, you know, Palestinians have their own government, blah, 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 blah. Except that Israel controls power in Gaza. They control how far you can go out to sea, where you can fish, where you can farm. It empowers settlers to take whatever they would like, frankly. Yeah, this is Sophie, it's not just the hospital. The hospital is just one. All of the Gaza Strip has had its power cut. Every medical facility. Every service. They control the medical supplies. They control which cities you can go to. Because again, travel between Palestinian cities is heavily and tightly controlled. Yeah, their water treatment plants, the internet. Even the aid Canada wants to send is often refused. Yeah. And if you happen to be in Gaza and you need a more advanced healthcare facility because you have cancer or something, there's a pretty decent chance you're going to get turned away and refused entry to Israel. Did you hear the debate Vosh had with an Israeli? I listened to some of it last night, but it was so late I fell asleep. The numbers are huge, which cannot be handled by the already suffering sector. Even before today's events, we have been warning that medical supplies are in sharp shortage, especially for cancer and dialysis. Patients with chronic diseases are dying due to the absence of medicine. He added that many cannot be treated in the occupied West Bank or abroad because they are being denied access by Israel and because authorities are preventing medical supplies from entering Gaza. Yeah. Israeli death toll rises to 200, according to authorities. Netanyahu invites opposition leaders to form emergency government. Netanyahu has invited opposition leaders Lapid and Gantz to form a unity government, according to his Likud party. Lapid had previously sought joining Netanyahu to show unity. Gantz has reportedly told Netanyahu he's considering the offer. Yeah, what's happening here is that Netanyahu is using this as an opportunity to consolidate power. And one of the things that we haven't mentioned yet is that Israel is currently in one of the most tumultuous political moments of its time, because Netanyahu attempted to end judicial oversight of essentially himself. If he was successful in eliminating that judicial oversight, there would be no checks and balances on a leader of Israel. Because effectively the leader of Israel controls the legislature, or their version of a legislature. And essentially the push to end this kind of judicial review is a power grab to essentially install an authoritarian dictatorship as well, and move ever closer towards fascism. He basically wanted to become a dictator? Yes. Netanyahu has been under a great deal of legal threat for a very long time. He's been under investigation for corruption that he's almost certainly guilty of. And he is seeking to entrench himself so that he can't be held accountable for that, while also maintaining power. So the Knesset is the legislature equivalent. So this is kind of the backdrop right now, is that Netanyahu was unable to pass that legislation because of sustained protests in Israel against his power grab. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis turned out to protest this, and however, this is going to be an opportunity for him to consolidate power, pass that legislation as maybe like provisional emergency powers, and justify that as like, use this as a justification to seize power and begin enacting far more genocidal policies regarding Palestinians. This is possibly the spark that allows him to become the fascist dictator of Israel, and also begin a campaign of extermination against Palestinians. This is what is at stake here. And yeah, Mr. Anderson, the United States provides $3.8 billion to Israel every year. And this is why earlier I said we need to be able to recognize that Israel's power flows downstream from American support. And so we in America need to take action to be able to more effectively organize politically to, frankly, oust anyone in the Democratic Party who's taking AIPAC money, to elect more progressive people domestically, not just for our own sakes, but for the sake of U.S. foreign policy related to everything else that happens on the planet. Is the U.S. going to get physically involved by sending over military force? Probably not. because again, Israel's military, and this is the other part. People who are saying, "Oh, this is the beginning of a Palestinian revolution," it's not. The military imbalance between Hamas and the Israeli military is overwhelming. Israel has every conceivable advantage, and if that advantage is put towards exterminationist policy, there is no real war. And unfortunately, I believe it's going to bend in that direction. Are all of the trans people being targeted over there? I frankly, while I do care greatly about human rights, I don't think that people being homophobic or transphobic is justification to commit war crimes against them. So that's my response to your question, Door Kickers Inc. Let's see. If so, we'd have to declare war on vast swaths of the American public, and frankly, that's not very consistent. Yeah, I assume this is the same crafted reason for massive violence in Palestine that we see every 4 to 7 years. Honestly, quasi-spec, this is far worse. The scale of this attack and the timing and political backdrop of this attack are going to lead to far worse outcomes for Palestinians. And given that Netanyahu is essentially solidifying a fascist dictatorship within Israel as we speak, in real time, this isn't just going to be business as usual, like militaristic clampdown on Palestine and then things back to like a uneasy and horrific status quo of apartheid. I don't think that's where this is going. Isn't there a rumor about Iran helping them with thousands of missiles? I mean, that's probably true, frankly, but I don't think that is... I don't think that Iran supplying missiles is something that is going to turn the tide in Hamas's favor at all. Noam Chomsky said, in the case of Israel-Palestine, a one-state solution will arise only on the U.S. model, with extermination or expulsion of the indigenous population. Yeah, currently, we are on track for exactly what Noam Chomsky foresaw. Yeah. Unless the United States steps in to end the apartheid, which there's no indication currently that the U.S. government broadly is going to do, it is going to get far worse. I will say that some of this... I will say that some of this calculation might change if evidence of like explicit mass extermination is discovered. But it would have to be compelling, verifiable, and presented in a way that's impossible to ignore. That is possibly the only way that would end U.S. support outside of changing domestic policies via organizing voters and getting out there and changing who's in charge of our political power. No, Iran is a regional power. It is not a superpower by any means. Iran is just an extremely formidable regional foe, or regional power, I should say. And likely they will be able to solidify a wider sphere of influence in the Middle East given more time. And yeah, one of their projects is indeed arming militant groups in an effort to destabilize their regional adversaries, which includes Israel. Yeah. Well, honestly, Erica, what's interesting to me about what you're saying there is that that's probably true, but I'm wondering because Turkey has a huge vested interest in the current power dynamics at play in Syria. So I'm wondering if there is a possibility that Turkey could be arming, possibly directly or indirectly, arming Hamas. But again, a lot of this is speculation. That's really immaterial to the wider foreign policy implications of what's happening today. Let's see. Yeah, again, as we continue monitoring the situation today, the number of casualties and deaths is only going to rise by quite a bit. We have a new update. The number of Palestinians killed in Gaza has risen to 232, with almost 1,700 having been wounded now. And again, a lot of those wounded are likely to die given the state of healthcare in the Gaza Strip. So, well, yeah, Turkey has decent relations with Israel, but Turkey is also deeply invested in propping up the government of Syria. So it could be a situation where the Turkish government is willing to covertly arm Hamas in order to maintain its ties with the Syrian government. Yeah, Rich Fleming, 100%. All of this is the the most violent outcome of, again, I quoted Martin Luther King Jr. earlier, where riots are the language of the unheard. And, war and violence like this is the language of the unheard under apartheid. This is what happens, and Israel shoulders the blame for that. Yeah, Israel's ambassador to the UN, by the way, just basically gave the middle finger to the UN and said Hamas holds sole responsibility and will bear the results of the ongoing fighting. The state of Israel will act in any way necessary to protect its citizens and sovereignty from the ongoing terrorist attacks originating from the Gaza Strip and carried out by Hamas and other terrorist organizations. So, yeah, I'm going to guess that when they continue saying over and over again, that they're going to act in any way necessary, they're laying the groundwork for even greater atrocities. And this is counterbalanced by the fact that Hamas has put out a new statement saying that they have fired 150 rockets at Tel Aviv, which is a response, Hamas is saying, to Israel's early attack on a high-rise building in Gaza City, which I believe earlier today that killed around 60 people, 60 civilians. Yeah. And guys, this is not going to go well for Palestinians, and frankly, Palestinians on the ground know this, even if they're not involved with Hamas, right? So Palestinians on the ground are currently setting up communal defense groups, and this is a statement from Amir Daoud, who is from the Wall and Settlements Resistance Commission, saying they are basically starting to put together neighborhood watch groups that are armed in more than 50 locations across the West Bank, to resist any pogrom attacks. And for those of you unfamiliar, a lot of the Israeli settler violence has been encouraged by the state of Israel. And these settler attacks are civilians arming themselves and attacking Palestinians, knowing that there will be no repercussions for them violently killing, harming, and expelling Palestinian groups. Because they know that the Palestinians there know that settlers who are, engaging in the illegal settlement of Palestinian lands are going to use this violence as an opportunity to both strike back in the name of, their country and communities, while also stealing more land. It's through tacit approval, but also there will often be like state support, like the state will bus in settlers or provide troops nearby to protect settlers while framing it as violence from Palestinians. To quote Amir Daoud, the groups are being set up north and east of Ramallah, north and south of Nablus, and in the Masafer Yada in Hebron, which are the areas that are the most commonly attacked by Israeli settlers. Protected by the Israeli army, the settlers are rampaging across the West Bank. The only way to protect ourselves is by communal unity and supporting the families of the villages that are subject to settler attacks. Again, the IDF acts as security, basically allowing Israeli settlers to attack with impunity. But if Palestinians try and retaliate or defend themselves, the IDF usually swoops in. I just got here. Things bad. Things very bad. On MSNBC, one reporter reported on 20 dead Israelis and then proceeded to say that was like 1,000 dead Americans if you adjusted for population. Yeah, again, there's also going to be a lot of propaganda attempting to justify the Israeli retaliation going on here, and it's very interesting, right, Rich Fleming, that a lot of Western reporters will adjust for population for dead Israelis, but they never seem to do that for dead Palestinians. Curious. Now there are, to say this a little bit, just a little bit, not everyone within Israel, and again, this should be obvious, but it still needs to be said, not everyone within Israel is a fascist or a conservative. Now, a member of the Hadash party and the Israeli Knesset named Ofer Kasif says that while the killing of civilians on both sides was condemnable, it was Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories and the actions of the Netanyahu-led government that was responsible for the deaths of Israelis and Palestinians. Quote, the deaths, are unbearable. But what we are saying is the only way to prevent such crimes on both sides is to end the occupation. As long as the occupation goes, such terrible crimes will continue, and this government wants that, he said. Kasif also criticized the U.S. government, saying that if it had pressed Israel to move towards a peaceful political solution and to end the occupation, events such as today would not have happened, which is true. Everything he said was true and accurate. And it's very, very frustrating to be an American and to know that we've to some degree played a role in this. It just feels like nothing had been working for decades. Palestinians had been fighting for personhood and statehood for 40 years, protesting and reaching out for support, only to be met with heavy shelling, land being occupied, not being able to leave or enter Gaza. It just feels like at this point, Palestine's like, what are they going to do? Kill us more? It's damned if you do, damned if you don't for them. Israel needs to end its occupation. Yeah, 100%. Like, the only actual solution to this is ending the occupation. But part of what I've been trying to get at here is also that the reason for the occupation continuing and the reason for none of this working is because of the political consolidation within Israel that is moving it towards fascism. Because it is politically useful for them to oppress and to antagonize Palestinians. And that has been true for quite some time now. And frankly, this is a huge gift to the Netanyahu government. And like like you say, like, you know, it just feels like at this point Palestine's like, what are they going to do? Kill us more? And my response to that is, yeah. Yeah. Once Netanyahu has his hands on fascistic power and the operation of the military, I do not doubt that Netanyahu will enact a regime of genocide on a scale, and I would argue to an extent that, like, what Palestinians have been going through for the last, 50, 60 years has been genocidal in nature. But it is going to be far more explicit. It is going to be done with the goal of elimination. Because again, there are some people out there, and I've seen them, I know that they exist, arguing that if Israel could have wiped out all of the Palestinians, they would have by now. But like, that ignores the fact that like that ignores the domestic politics of Israel. Perfect opportunity to just turn the whole area into nuclear glass and concrete. Well, they're not going to nuke the West Bank. That's stupid. They will bomb it into oblivion. That they'll do. It's been a slow genocide. Look at the American colonial genocide. Yeah. So I just want to make it clear that there are forces within the Israeli government that do not want this, that understand the situation and understand that the only solution is to end the occupation, but they do not have the power to do so or to enact those policies. They could be empowered with U.S. support, but that is not forthcoming at this time. One thing I haven't checked is U.S. response to a lot of this. Has there been... Yeah, okay. Biden offers Israel sweeping U.S. support against Hamas attack. I mean, this isn't surprising, but yeah. Yeah, President Joe Biden said the U.S. stands ready to offer Israel all appropriate means of support in response to deadly surprise attack by Palestinian militant group Hamas. That's not surprising. It would have been really, really great for the U.S. president to come out against the apartheid regime going on, but that's not forthcoming. Also, for those of you wondering here, Netanyahu has officially declared war. As of an hour ago. Less than an hour ago. Former Israeli ambassador David Friedman says he's never seen the border breach like this. I mean, like, Also, just keep in mind when they say that there was a land, air, and sea attack, like the air attack was like they had some dudes paraglide across the border. I had a friend who was born in Israel. Him and his family immigrated to Canada to avoid the mandatory law to be recruited into the Israeli military. Said he was going to go back to if he were to go back to Israel, he would be executed for leaving and avoiding his responsibilities. I don't know that Israel has that policy. I believe that too, but what I'm saying is that this has already been happening, and they have already been voicing wanting to do that. Israeli government. It's been a slow burn. Now they can accelerate it. They've been leveling Gaza for years. I can't be upset that Palestinians is finally like enough and doing what they can to fight back. What I can be upset about is them attacking civilian targets. Again, I don't like, even if you are the underdog in a conflict, I don't think that justifies war crimes. That's yeah, you know, that's just a deep and abiding position I have, possibly axiomatic. Again, I'd be far more in favor of the and I think the world at large would be too, if the targets being hit by Hamas were military. Yeah, I know you're not, Doodlebird. I know you're not. I just know that there are definitely people who are. I know that Israel has a policy of arresting people for avoiding the draft. I don't know that they have a policy to execute people who avoided the draft. Yeah, former White House Deputy National Security Advisor says Hamas attack will completely remake the region's political circumstances, which is, yeah, again, this is not your run-of-the-mill, like, you know, back and forth that we've seen between Hamas and Israel. This is something that's going to fundamentally reshape the relationship between these two places. Biden is apparently going to speak in about 2 minutes here. So let's head over to C-SPAN. Or maybe not. C-SPAN. Here we go.
Check 1 2.
Yeah.
Check 1 2. Microphone check 1 2. Give me a thumbs up when you're good. Check 1 2.
You know, look, prep yourselves for cringe.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
He's not going to have a good response that we're hoping for. That's a terrible noise. Under Israeli military law, penalties for avoiding military service differ depending on whether such avoidance is deemed to constitute absence without leave or desertion. Absence from service without permission is punishable by 3 years imprisonment, while desertion or absence from military service with the intention not to return to the army is punishable by 15 years imprisonment. That makes sense. They are creating settlements to eventually push Palestinians out for good. Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's we'll shift back over. Begins. I wish I had better news for you guys today. There's no good news when it comes to the events unfolding today. Love your mannequin in the back. Yeah, this is my partner's workshop. It's my secondary streaming location. Those paragliders are really concerning / fascinating from an asymmetrical military doctrine standpoint. They're super cheap. They're like technicals. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like when they did the bombing attack with like lanterns with like little balloons. President of Palestine has made a statement. Take a look at it real quick. President Abbas discusses developments with French counterpart. President Mahmoud Abbas received a phone call from French President Emmanuel Macron, during which they discussed the escalating tension in the region. During the phone call, President Abbas emphasized that the current escalation in the region is the result of political impasse, the denial of Palestinian people's legitimate right to self-determination, and the establishment of their independent state, with East Jerusalem as its capital, the ongoing Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people, their land, and their sacred sites, and the continued terrorism of Israeli settlers. Which, by the way, this touches on why it was such a big deal that Donald Trump moved the recognized capital to Jerusalem, because, again, East Jerusalem is supposed to be the capital of Palestine. So it was a direct blow to kind of the two-state solution as conceptualized. Yeah, honestly, he's not incorrect in what he said here. Looks like they're maybe getting ready here. Okay, still not quite time. One interesting note here is that President Abbas stated that ending the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land with East Jerusalem as its capital, recognizing the Palestinian people's right to independence and sovereignty, and granting full UN membership would ensure security, stability, and peace in the region. And honestly, that's something I hadn't thought that much about. But yeah, Palestinians should have representation in the UN. That would greatly increase their ability to influence international politics. But part of the problem is that requires recognition from other states, and that hasn't happened yet. So it's kind of like a cart before the horse situation. Yeah. They need to be recognized by powerful states. And frankly, U.S. positions are not conducive to that. Oops, sorry. Yeah, they're all yeah, that the one of the main roadblocks is that even if you were to recognize Palestine as an official state, it has a lot of disputed territory, which needs to be ironed out before it can be cleanly considered a state and incorporated into the wider geopolitical community. Yeah, there are a lot of barriers here. Yeah, there's more video coming out this time from different sources, both aligned with Hamas and also Israeli sources that are showing different atrocities being committed by both sides. It's very, very bad. The Israeli State Department is putting out video of alleged kidnappings done by Hamas. And obviously the Hamas is putting out videos of the results of the retributive. I had an extra T in there. Bombing campaign that's currently ongoing. Apparently, Biden has talked with the King of Jordan as well as Netanyahu already, so we could be getting some pretty interesting updates here. Here is a brief chart here from Al Jazeera, just comparing the deaths on both sides over the last, 15 years.
I just want to know what you're starting with so that I can make a decision based on how much stuff is in front.
The human cost from 2008 to 2023. In total, there have been 6,407 Palestinian deaths and 308 Israeli deaths, with 152,560 Palestinians injured in that time and 6,307 Israelis injured. Again, the scale of the retribution is really difficult to comprehend. Again, like for every dead Israeli, there are 20 dead Palestinians.
Are we hoping this goes so late that he can't switch it?
It's horrible. Also, wise to remember that we have a lot of boomers. Just as we have a lot of boomers, Palestine and Israel do too, and neither the Jews nor the Palestinians did well in World War II. True. They're nasty hardliners on the Palestinian side, too. Not everybody would be down for a two-state solution. Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, to say that there are no Palestinians that want just like a complete and utter like genocide of Israelis is ludicrous. The difference is they don't have the power to actually enact that as a policy, whereas Israelis do. And now this gives Israel carte blanche to go even harder on the Gaza Strip. I mean, Gay Aaron, I would argue it's not even going to go harder. It's just going to go as hard as possible, if not completely in an attempt to eradicate Palestinians. Then pretty goddamn close.
It's not a nice topic. It's like semi-primitive.
I mean, I don't know, you know, it's like just above the podium, you know, like 5 or 3/4.
I've heard folks argue this was an intelligence failure on Mossad's part. I mean, possibly, you know, but like ultimately this is a, you know, a couple hundred Hamas fighters infiltrating Israel, and yeah. Oh, well, Nilly, why can't we ignore the rest of the world and what the rest of the world does and fix America? Because we live in an interconnected international world. What happens in one part of the world affects America, and vice versa. So, unfortunately, we can't just fix ourselves. You know, it requires a incorporating what's happening elsewhere. Into our domestic plans. Also, literally, U.S. support is crucial to propping up not just Israel, but many other regimes around the world. Hi, Jack. First discovered y'all a while ago. Finally got the chance to join. Just a little sorry I wasn't under better circumstances, but nonetheless, still happy to be here. Well, the Ukrainian, thank you very much for jumping over to riverboat.gg. I still appreciate it. Hey, Chocolate Wee, how you doing? Plus, America funds this, so yeah. I mean, and again, even without American funding at this point, Israel is going to have one of the strongest militaries, you know, in the region, definitely, especially with their nuclear weapons. Yeah. It's systemic. Israel could have addressed the Palestinian and Jordanian concerns about hardline attempts to desecrate Al-Aqsa when they started in April. They played it down for no reason. Well, I would argue they didn't play it down for no reason. They played it down specifically because the governing parties in Israel benefit from stoking and exacerbating this resentment and conflict. For a variety of reasons. Again, military, police, and the curtailment of civil rights. These are all things that empower their fascist goals and aims. And it doesn't matter if Palestinians and Jordanians have concerns about it, because, frankly, they want Jordanians and Palestinians to have concerns about it and to be angry and to lash out exactly like this. Oh, Vorkvoid, if you go over to riverboat.gg, you just have to click the live. There should be a little tab at the top that says live. Or you can just go to riverboat.gg. Riverboat.gg/live. There you go. Where's that Biden? Where's Joseph? Anything else here? Fighting is ongoing in 22 locations near Gaza, which is more than last reported. Two homes in a refugee camp in Khan Yunis, one of the most densely populated ones in Gaza, have been destroyed as a result of an Israeli airstrike. Yeah. Another home was targeted in the Zaytun neighborhood, also in the south, where casualties are also being reported. There was no prior warning given to either attack in order to allow residents to evacuate. Yeah. It's going to be a very bloody day, and I feel terrible. Nilly, you got slapped by Nightbot because your account is very new. Our economy would benefit a lot if we stopped funding wars like in Ukraine and Israel. Well, one of the reasons we fund wars in Ukraine in particular is because we economically benefit from Ukraine not being within Russia's sphere of influence, right? So would our economy benefit from that? I don't know. Would our economy benefit from making less military hardware? I don't know. Many towns in America rely on those factories.
Today,
Anyway.
the people of Israel are under attack, orchestrated by a terrorist organization, Hamas. And this month, I want to say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves. You know, the world's seen appalling images. Thousands of rockets in a space of hours raining down on Israeli cities. I got up this morning, started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my calls. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians. In the street, in their homes, innocent people murdered, wounded, entire families taken hostage by Hamas. Just days after Israel marked the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar. It's unconscionable. You know, when I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, I told him the United States stands with the people of Israel in the face of these terrorist assaults. Israel has the right to defend itself and its people. Full stop. There's never justification for terrorist attacks. And my administration's support for
Thanks so
Israel's
much for
security
joining US
is
and
rock
Site Chat
solid
Friendo.
and unwavering. Let me say this as clearly as I can. This is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks to seek advantage. The world is watching. I've also been in contact with the King of Jordan, spoken with members of Congress, directed my national...
And yet I have no doubt the fascist forces within Israel are going to take advantage of this moment to gain more power and control over that country.
Security team to engage with their Israeli counterparts, military to military, intelligence to intelligence, diplomat to diplomat, to make sure Israel has what it needs. I've also directed my team to remain in constant contact with leaders throughout the region, including Egypt, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Oman, the UAE, as well as our European partners and the Palestinian Authority. It's also a terrible tragedy on a human level. It's hurting innocent people. Seeing the lives that have been broken by this, the families torn apart, it's heartbreaking. And Jill and I are praying for those families who've been impacted by this violence. We grieve with those who've lost their loved ones, lost a piece of their soul. We have hope for swift recovery for many who have been wounded. But we're going to remain in close touch with Prime Minister. I personally am going to remain in close contact with Prime Minister Netanyahu as this situation continues to develop. And let there be no mistake, the United States stands with the state of Israel, just as we have from the moment the United States became the first nation to recognize Israel 11 minutes after its founding 75 years ago. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, was there an intelligence failure in the lead up to this attack?
Mr. President, can you tell us what Phoebe asked you specifically for support?
What a coward, dude. Actually cowardly behavior.
Another based site chat Peepo.
Kyrie, thank you for gifting subs to Vork Void and to our new member, the Ukrainian. Ukrainian? I'm gonna mess up your name. I'm sorry. That was quick. Like Blinken didn't even say anything. Yeah, I was expecting Blinken to come forward and say something. It looked like he was going to, but I'm guessing that I'm guessing they have like another call they need to get to like imminently. This is bullshit. Yeah, 100%. Well, and I don't know. Can Biden talk about Palestinians and Palestine without that being construed as recognition of the Palestinian state? This just shows how worried they are, how short they kept it. Yeah. God. Yeah, but like Discord and Vol, like Israel doesn't buy that much from us. And it's also worth remembering that Israel is one of the world's largest arms manufacturers now. It's not like it was like 60, 80 years ago, you know? They make their own weapons now. We aren't really sending them all that much like military hardware or anything. Like we're just basically sending them taxpayer dollars at this point. Yeah, again, the single-minded support of Israel in America is very it runs very deep, right? Like again, this is why I said like unless there was ironclad proof that Israel was like putting Palestinians in concentration camps and executing them en masse, I don't know that America, as it's currently constituted and in power is currently distributed, would actually do anything. Like it either will take more progressive victories in America to change the political dynamics at play in our leadership, or it's going to take acts of unfathomable cruelty, malice, and hatred on the part of the state of Israel in order to bring international condemnation upon it from every direction, including the United States. And yeah, free Palestine for the love of God. Like they've got nowhere else to go. It would have been a genocide on the level of the Bosnian genocide for the US to even begin to care. Yeah, exactly, Sophie. Like that's the horrific thing here. Like the only way that this brings about an end to the conflict, and I don't, maybe this is Hamas's intent, but I doubt it, is that this serves as a spark to ignite like a genocidal reign of terror upon Palestinians. You realize Palestinians would support the beheading of you? Well, that's just not true. I know Palestinians who don't support the beheading of me. You know that this is like saying, there are Americans that would support the beheading of you, which, yeah, that's true. There are people in America who want to murder me. Oh, I guess we should kill Americans? Question mark? No, obviously not. There are always going to be bigots everywhere. Shit is silly? 100%. Deeply unserious people. All right, what do we got? Yeah, I mean, all I really heard from that Biden address was just that nothing about what is happening right now is shifting the U.S. diplomatic stance regarding Israel and Palestine. Oh, this is interesting. So these attacks seem to have been timed slightly. The attacks on Israel came as a peace deal between the US, Saudi Arabia, and Israel was gaining momentum. Last week, the US National Security Council coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa, Brett McGurk, met with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to discuss the different elements of the mega deal, according to Axios. Meanwhile, Israeli opposition leader Benny Gantz visited Washington last week. A proposal was made at the conclusion of the G20 summit last month for an economic corridor linking Europe and the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, India, and the UAE. The attacks, however, have been meant to absolutely send a message to any Muslim country that seeks to strike peace with Israel. Hamas spokesman Ibrahim Hamed said Saturday night on Al Jazeera. He urged them to absolve themselves of what he called great shame. So it's also designed to interrupt diplomatic relations with Israel. Yeah, I understand to an extent, Kyrie. Like, if you're an Israeli, right, and like a couple dozen armed men came rolling through your neighborhood, and you saw them like pulling people out on the street and just shooting them dead, like, or kidnapping them, like, yeah, you're gonna have some feelings, you know. But we can't draft our policies based on how people feel when they're in the middle of severe trauma. Here's Netanyahu. Yes, earlier today, announcing the intent to declare war.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה, לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. הבוקר חמאס פתח במתקפת פתע רצחני נגד מדינת ישראל ונגד אזרחיה. אנחנו בתוך זה משעות הבוקר המוקדמות. כינסתי את ראשי מערכת הביטחון, הנחיתי קודם כל לטהר את היישובים מהמחבלים שחדרו פנימה. הפעולה הזאת מתבצעת בשעות הללו. במקביל הוריתי לבצע גיוס מילואים נרחב ולהשיב מלחמה שערה בעוצמה ובהיקף שהאויב לא הכיר. האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע כמותו. אני קורא בינתיים לכל אזרחי ישראל להישמע בקפדנות להנחיות הצבא, להנחיות פיקוד העורף. אנחנו במלחמה ואנחנו ננצח בה.
Yeah, again, this has the horrible effect domestically of making him look like a strong and powerful and dependable leader. And I have to say, Benjamin Netanyahu is a evil person. He is bad. He is a fascist. And the fact that this is going to empower him is literally the worst thing for both the people in Israel and also the people in Palestine. Well, that goes without saying. Fascists corrupt as hell. Hey, Jim Moneymaker. To be honest, this isn't a dig against anyone personally, but as a Jew, I get upset when white leftists talk about the Arab-Israeli conflict like they have a PhD. I mean, that's fair. I'm sorry if any of my coverage has upset you. but I'm going to continue talking about how I feel and view this situation. There's an Israeli journalist telling Velshi, who's Velshi? She thinks this will make him weaker, not stronger. He failed on his #1 brand proposition, keeping Israelis safe from big bad Arabs. I disagree. I disagree entirely. There was a story that came out just a few, minutes ago, less than an hour ago, that had basically the other parties coming together to form a unity government with Netanyahu. They're basically seeking to empower him right now, politically. Velshi on MSNBC. Sorry. Gotcha. Also, folks, if I may, this may add further helpful context to the issue of Israelis' intel failures. Netanyahu had apparently been dismissing warnings for months by his own generals. So we got Noga Tarnopolsky. Saying the Israeli army warned Netanyahu for months that his push for government overhaul put Israel at great risk of multi-front attack. He dismissed their warnings by accusing the military of joining the left-wing protesters against him. His ministers said army could go to hell. Well, yeah, all of this makes sense because either way, it's a win-win. He gets to paint the military as being incompetent, political enemies, while also setting up a situation in which, if there is an attack, he's then able to look like the big bad, the big dependable hero. It's a win-win for Netanyahu, frankly. Honestly, I feel like the vast majority of people who cover the Israeli-Palestinian conflict are... I mean, there's a lot easier jobs you could do in the world, frankly, that pay a lot better than that, and don't come with the risk of death. A lot of them care deeply. What gets me is the fact Israel doesn't see the comparison of what the Nazis did to the Jewish people and how they are treating Palestinians. Or I could be wrong and they know exactly what they're doing. Well, I mean, you can look at, one of the really deep reasons why Netanyahu is explicitly a fascist is because, and you can see it. He's made statements recently about how Hitler didn't really want to kill the Jews. Netanyahu. Yeah. Here's an article from Haaretz. Damn it. God damn. Oh wait, can I read it if I turn off ad block? Okay. What? There we go. Yeah, Netanyahu, Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews. Prime Minister tells World Zionist Congress that Hitler only wanted to expel the Jews, but Jerusalem's Grand Mufti convinced him to exterminate them, a claim that was rejected by most accepted Holocaust scholars, which is a very kind way of saying that Benjamin Netanyahu was engaging in actual Holocaust denial. So, yeah. Use an incognito window. I can't be bothered. Yeah, no, this guy is evil. When I say he's evil, he's explicitly peddling neo-Nazi rhetoric. and seeking to become a fascist dictator. My honest take, by the way, Netanyahu might get a boost in the shortest term, but once the full scope of the increasingly verified, it would seem, intel failures come through, I really don't see how this doesn't blow up in his face. I mean, yeah, I think he could get lucky. Not the first time a right-wing strongman got lucky over the past decade or so, sadly, but I guess I'm more hopeful, at least based on what I've been hearing for now, just my 2 cents. I mean, I hope you're right, Ukrainian. What is the status of the judiciary? Okay, yeah, so 3 weeks ago, the Israeli Supreme Court heard their first challenge to Netanyahu's proposed judicial overhaul. Let's see. And this was, yeah, just 3 weeks ago. Netanyahu's coalition, a collection of ultra-nationalist and ultra-religious lawmakers, unveiled the overhaul earlier this year, saying it was necessary to rein in an unelected judiciary they believed wields too much power. Critics say the plan, which would weaken the Supreme Court, is a profound threat to Israeli democracy and that it would concentrate power in the hands of Netanyahu and his allies. They say the court is a key counterweight on majority rule in a country with an otherwise weak system of checks and balances, with just one house of parliament where the governing coalition is headed by the prime minister. The country's president has largely ceremonial powers, and there is no firm written constitution. Yeah, a ruling is not expected for weeks or even months. Could hint at the session, could hint at the court's direction. The marathon hearing was largely businesslike, though at times the arguments became tense and heated. Netanyahu has not said whether he would respect a decision by the court to strike down the new law. Again, what we're seeing right now, today, is that other members of the Knesset are coming together. Other governing coalitions are coming together here and potentially allying with Netanyahu in a way that could empower him enough to get this bill through. And if this bill does get through, if this judicial reform happens, well, then it doesn't really matter if it was just a short-term thing, because it's going to become a long-term thing. I really had a lot of hope when he got ousted from the prime minister's seat and then was being investigated for corruption. I really had hope that he wasn't going to be back, but he managed to take power once again. It's possible to disagree with Israel and voice your disagreement with the state of Israel without being anti-Semitic. True. You can criticize states. Critiquing state policy is acceptable. Always. Because states aren't people. I'm even beginning to wonder myself if maybe Netanyahu might indeed have dismissed all those warnings entirely on purpose just to take advantage of a potential large-scale conflict like this one. Well, yeah, Ukrainian, that's what I've been saying. You know, like, it could also be that wasn't necessarily the direct intent, but rather like a calculated, well, if that happens, that will be good for me. And in the short term, you know, dismissing the military and its concerns would also be beneficial to me. I think it can both. I think it can be both, you know? Yeah, this is going to be terrible. In a lot of different ways. Oh, fuck. Yeah, so currently what's happening right now is, in addition to the doubling down of diplomatic support for Israel, the United States is currently debating giving Israel access to even more enhanced intelligence. So this is as of 1 minute ago on NBC. The U.S. is discussing enhancing its intelligence sharing with the Israelis to support the Israeli government during this Hamas attack. According to a U.S. Official and source familiar with the discussions, U.S. officials say that if the Israelis knew this attack was coming, they did not share it with the U.S., and the U.S. government was surprised by the attack, according to multiple U.S. officials. We were not tracking this, one senior U.S. military official said, which, makes sense. It's 100 guys in Palestine, and a couple of them have some, hang gliders. Yeah, you can't always predict that, frankly. The officials said very early assessments are that the timing could be related to the Saudi-Israel normalization becoming more possible. They also say the 50-year anniversary of the Yom Kippur War may have been a factor. Lawmakers have not been briefed in a classified setting. According to a source familiar, there have been unclassified updates for lawmakers. One U.S. official said the past few months, while Iranian-backed groups have been relatively quiet, Iran has continued to arm and train militias. And that includes continuing to arm Hamas and Hezbollah. So whoever said Iran could be sending missiles or rockets to Hamas, bingo, you get a point. I don't know if you already discussed this, but I heard on the news that it took 4 hours for them to respond to the attack. I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen any indication of that. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that the Israeli military is constantly has the ability to respond. I don't necessarily believe, without seeing more evidence, that it took them that long. The additional intelligence to Israel could include drones, signals, and satellites, but the officials would not say what is most likely or under active consideration. So, yeah, just what we need. We need to send Israel more tools to spy on people. Just give the burgeoning fascist coalition every tool in our toolkit. We also have another update on the number of Israelis killed so far. Over 200 Israelis were killed in the attack, with another 900 injured. From thousands of rockets, apparently, is the official statement. I don't know why Hamas attacked Israel. Israeli military has a full military. They can respond to the attacks. That's like throwing a rocket at a tank. Well, honestly, Mikwawa, they do that too. They throw rocks at tanks. But the reason why Hamas attacked Israel is largely the same reason why people in poor communities or who've been subjected to police violence for decades react to being second-class citizens with riots. People might riot knowing that they're going to get beaten by police or even killed or have their fingers bitten off by police dogs. But they do it anyway, because they have no other outlet to try and express their desire for freedom. There's literally a Hamas soldier riding some Mad Max paraglider into Israel. Yeah, they also have done attacks with paper lanterns. Floating paper lanterns over the border walls. Again, these are acts of desperation, not they are not acts of a fully equipped and able force, obviously. But they're doing it because they've been slowly being they've been slowly ostracized and killed and oppressed for like the last 80 years. So, you know, when that happens and the average age of a Palestinian is 19 and a half years old, like you're going to get some wild shit. It's going to be terrible. Again, I just keep coming back around to that fact, and that's just painful to think about. The average Palestinian is just like can't even rent a car in the United States. I'm seeing talk of Israel shutting off electricity to Palestine. That's already happened. Right side, Rob. The Israeli government shut off power to Palestine several hours ago, I believe. We went over an interview earlier with the director of the one major hospital in the Gaza Strip, and they were saying basically they can't continue to operate if the power is off for much longer. It's a really horrible situation. It's funny until you remember that air gliders is all they got due to years of brutal oppression and whatnot. Well, yeah, you know, like they can't freely travel between cities. They don't have access to like medical supplies. They don't have the ability to travel borders. They don't have the ability to like go too far into the ocean. They don't have the ability to like fish freely or farm freely. You know, their homes are being bulldozed by illegal settlers, and if they try to speak up about that or protest that, they just get shot by IDF snipers. Like, it's what else can they do? Yeah, literally Israeli settlers will roll in to a community backed by the IDF and then just use a cement truck to like fill in wells to make it impossible to get clean water, you know? Yeah, I don't really see this ending up good for the Palestinian people. I think the Palestinians need better representation. I think Israel is going to end up completely taking the Gaza Strip from them, forcing them into West Bank. I mean, honestly, McWawa, I think that's a overly rosy view of what's going to happen. There are already Israeli officials openly calling for the complete extermination of Palestinians, and that's going to get worse. That predated this attack. And Benjamin Netanyahu is in the middle of attempting to seize dictatorial powers. So, yeah. I don't think the other problem is Palestinians can't get better representation because they kind of don't live in like a environment that's conducive to a democracy. You know, like they are effectively in squalid conditions, hemmed in on all sides, their freedoms severely curtailed, and then you know, basically what they have, right, in Hamas is like when a gang rolls into a poor town that doesn't have like a police force at all, you know? A gang rolls in, and because everyone's struggling economically, the gang is able to provide some basic social services, like maybe they're able to get someone's grandma hospital treatment or something like that. And over time, they just kind of become the de facto government. That's basically Hamas in a nutshell. They're able to provide some select services, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they're a gang dedicated to the gang's overall aims. Then they're dehumanized for their conditions. Yeah. I just hope they don't do a genocide. Historical sites be damned. Yeah, I'm... and frankly, that's a long shot, in my opinion, unfortunately. this image helped me to understand things. Palestinian land loss, 1946 to present. Yeah, this was, Palestinian land is in green. So 1946, the vast majority of Palestine. And then the UN plan in 1947, and dividing the country up into, let's be real, the gooniest I don't know how anyone looks at the 1947 UN map and is like, yes, this looks good. This will work out. I'm sorry, you look at this plan and you're like, yeah, this will work out great. How on earth do you look at this and be like, yeah, this is fine? And then you have 1949 to 1967, where you can see kind of the further encroachment here, and the now recognizable Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Or not the West Bank. Yes, West Bank. Yes? Yes, West Bank. Well, yeah, no, like, the idea of Jerusalem as an international city, I think is still good. That's still a good idea, you know? Splitting the city in two, I think that's fine, actually. It's like the splitting of Israel into like two separate land masses that are that's divided by Palestinian land. That this makes no sense to me. But then you have the much greater incursion, 1949 to 1967. And then you have today, where the Gaza Strip is even smaller, and the West Bank is just completely, like, obliterated and slowly being gobbled up. Everyone had severe lead brain. That's true. You just know whoever drew the 1947 plan had Habsburg jaw. It's true. It's true. Yeah, it's all split up by biblical sites and lands, which isn't really a great way to split up territory, just generally speaking. We just spent 20 years going from one country into another, fighting Hamas and the Taliban, and yet here they are. Pakistan and Afghanistan show support for Palestine, calls for cessation of hostilities. I mean, it's not surprising that a lot of these countries continue to despise Israel. Again, consider the fact that, like, you had Palestine as a state, and then, like, the UN just kind of unilaterally plopped Israel in that. And over time, it's just kind of resulted in ethnic cleansing and genocidal policies that have only increased in severity. I mean, like, it's understandable. I don't think it's justifiable, but it's understandable. Yeah, the Nakba is like one of the greatest crimes of like the 1900s. I'll just go ahead and say it. I think that the situation with Israel is much like if someone was given money in compensation for being the victim of a shooting and then used that money to go buy a gun and do a shooting themselves. Jerusalem got occupied in 1967, and that's when the city was divided into east and west. Yeah. Today's been a hard news day. Thanks for being here, chat. You're an average Palestinian, mean age 19, remember? You've known nothing but this. Netanyahu's first term started in 1996. He's been in power longer than the average Palestinian has been alive. Yeah. Yeah. Like that's really something that hammers home what Netanyahu is trying to do. You know, he's trying to seize power for the rest of his life, and he's already been in power longer than most Palestinians have been alive. Also, you know how people came in here and were like, "Hey, you know, Palestinians would like to cut your head off, right?" You guys know that type of rhetoric doesn't work on me. There are people who come into my chat every day to call me like a fag who should burn in hell. Like, yeah, I'm well aware that there are people everywhere who would like to murder gay people. That's not new information. Thanks, you can call me Jess. Also, hello, ominous frog. I like your username. I've been on the verge of crying for a while now. You know, let it out. This is worth crying over. I have a folder full of books on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Yeah. Irked over there, armed with a gun. Hey, Rakasan Dragon. Apparently some towns that had IDF present mysteriously had none as civilians were being attacked. Yeah, not to be too conspiratorial here, but like, there's a decent chance that Netanyahu knew that this was going to happen and allowed it to happen specifically to further his fascistic aims. Yeah, like I don't know what percentage that is. I don't have any proof of that, but just given the current political situation, that would make a lot of sense to me. I still can't get over that Netanyahu quote about how he believes Hitler didn't want to kill the Jews. My goodness. Apparently, the Palestinian Authority President Abbas has told Secretary of State Blinken that injustice towards Palestinians is driving the conflict with Israel to an explosion. Abbas attributed that escalation to practices of the colonialists and the Israeli occupation forces and the aggression against the Islamic and Christian sanctities, which, yeah. What? Oh, yeah, did you guys, again, I showed this earlier on stream, but Netanyahu has explicitly said that he does not believe Hitler wanted to exterminate the Jews. And in fact, blamed Jerusalem's Grand Mufti for convincing Hitler to exterminate the Jews. In explicit Holocaust denial. Like, this is Holocaust denial, by the way. Yeah, Rakasan Dragon, like, seeing people on social media cheering on these attacks when, like, it's literally war crimes and atrocities on both sides. And you can acknowledge that the Israeli war crimes and atrocities are on a much greater scale, but like, to cheer on Hamas for their war crimes is not a correction. It's like, yay, now both sides are being war crimed. Finally, civilians on both sides will suffer and die. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, actually, what's wrong with you? God. I'd never expect an Israeli to say that. Well, Rakkasan Dragon, Benjamin Netanyahu is a fascist. It's hardly surprising that he uses neo-Nazi rhetoric. Yeah, there's really no upside to any of this situation, or there's no like clean ending to it either. Apparently, multiple hostage situations near the border. There's also an image going around and a video going around of a captured hostage. And it was posted to social media claiming that, Hamas militants had captured like an Israeli soldier. But you can very clearly see that the captured soldier is wearing like sweatpants and flip-flops, and she's bleeding all around her crotch and anus through the sweatpants, and it's pretty clear that that's not a soldier in this situation. Yeah, so again, when I say be careful looking at social media about this stuff, I really do mean it, chat. Like, it is very vile, and I cannot understand how people are defending war crimes, you know? It's quite frustrating because I'm seeing IRL activist friends of mine just cheering on and uncritically supporting Hamas, accusing others who say something on behalf, others who say something about this of being anti-liberation. Like, no, Hamas isn't the will of all Palestinians, and it boils my blood seeing a bunch of Western white leftists framing Hamas as the vanguards of the revolution and cheering on the violence while they sit safe at home in the US. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry. An oppressed people doing a war crime is not cause for celebration. It's just not. Especially when those war crimes are going to be used as a pretext to, like, do genocide against the very people that are supposedly being liberated by said war crime. Like, again, I feel like I'm I feel like I'm in a very small bubble of American leftists who actually understand foreign policy. Because there are so many, like, activists who are just absolutely fucking nuts about this.